Dive by Dr. Pat, leading innovation in fertility excellence.
If you walk into a pharmacy today, and just grab a standard prenatal vitamin off the shelf, there is a very high statistical probability that it just doesn't contain the actual nutrients you need.
Right. It's actually kind of alarming.
Yeah. In fact, there was a recent clinical analysis that looked at 48 top-selling prenatal brands, and exactly 0 of them met basic clinical recommendations for key nutrients. 0 out of 48.
Which really, it shatters that illusion of total medical control we tend to expect.
Right.
Because when a doctor prescribes, say, an antibiotic, it's a specific chemical at a specific dose, right? It's engineered for a specific job. But the supplement aisle, it operates in a completely different reality.
Oh, absolutely. It's heavily marketed with these beautiful pastel pink bottles and promises of a perfect pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, the actual science inside those capsules is incredibly murky.
So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to cut straight through that marketing and figure out what is actually happening inside the body.
Yeah, we're really getting into the biology today.
We are. We're pulling from a foundational, highly detailed source today. It's a comprehensive 2026 clinical expert series from the journal Obstetrics and Gynecology.
And it is incredibly thorough.
It really is. It maps out the exact metabolic demands, the cellular requirements, and even the socioeconomic realities of building another human being.
Right, because it's a massive undertaking for the body.
Exactly. We're going to look at what it physically takes to construct a fetus and why that standard vitamin bottle might just be giving you a false sense of security.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Before we even look at a supplement label, we have to understand the sheer scale of the construction project happening inside a pregnant body.
Yeah, the physiological changes required to grow a fetus in a placenta are just staggering.
I mean, the whole baseline shifts, right?
Right, the entire metabolic baseline of the body shifts. But, and this is key, it doesn't shift in the way popular culture tells us it does.
You're talking about the eating for two thing.
Yes, exactly. The phrase eating for two is everywhere.
But according to the clinical data, that is a complete myth.
Right.
At least when it comes to raw calories.
A total myth. It is not a flat rate where you just start doubling your meals on day one.
Right.
In the first trimester, the body actually requires 0 extra calories above a standard baseline. 0.
Wow. 0 extra calories.
Right. The energy demand scales gradually alongside the physical growth of the fetus. So while it's 0 extra in the first trimester, that bumps up to an additional 340 calories a day in the second trimester.
Okay, so a small bump.
Yeah, and then 452 extra calories a day in the third.
Which really isn't a massive amount of food,
Mm-hmm.
That's roughly, an avocado and a handful of almonds in the second trimester?
Exactly, it's a snack, not a whole extra meal.
But here is the crucial distinction our source makes. While the caloric need doesn't skyrocket immediately, the demand for structural materials completely spikes.
Yes, the structural demand is where the real shift happens.
Like, the required protein intake jumps by over 50%. It goes from 46 grams a day for a non-pregnant adult straight up to 71 grams a day.
And that biological distinction between calories and protein is vital. I mean, calories provide the energy to drive the metabolic processes.
Right, the fuel.
Right, the fuel. But protein provides the amino acids that actually form the physical tissues of the fetus and also the expanded maternal blood volume.
So, to visualize it, think of a massive construction site for a new skyscraper. Calories are the raw energy, right? They pay the electric bill, they keep the generators humming, they fuel the bulldozers so the crew can keep working.
I love that analogy, yeah.
But the protein and the specialized fats we're about to discuss, those are the physical steel beams and the concrete blocks.
Right, exactly.
You can have all the energy and money in the world to keep a site running, but without the steel, no building goes up.
That perfectly captures the mechanics of it.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at those structural materials, we really have to examine essential lipids, specifically polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFAs.
Okay, and the major ones there are DHA and EPA. Right.
Exactly. The major ones are DHA and EPA, and the human body cannot synthesize these from scratch. They must be ingested.
So they have to come from our diet.
Yes, and they act as the crucial biological wiring, primarily driving cell membrane formation and energy storage in the developing fetal brain and retina.
Okay, wait, let's pause on the DHA for a second, because the clinical trials in our source present a really counterintuitive puzzle here.
Oh, yeah, the supplement trials.
Right. The FDA recommends taking 200 to 300 milligrams of DHA a day during pregnancy. Naturally, The immediate solution seems to be just taking a concentrated fish oil pill.
That's what most people do, yeah.
But our source points to a massive systematic review of randomized trials. And it found that when people just took the extracted supplements, there were no sustained, measurable benefits to infant cognition or visual development.
Which is wild, right?
It is. So wait, if the extracted pills aren't showing a clear cognitive boost in the clinical trials, why take them? Why are they even on the recommended list?
So what's fascinating here is that it comes down to a concept called the food matrix effect.
The food matrix effect. Okay, what is that?
Well, nutrients often behave differently in isolation than they do in their natural state.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Observational studies consistently show that when pregnant people consume actual low-mercury seafood, about 8 to 12 ounces a week, there are distinct, measurable improvements in infant neurodevelopment.
So the real food works.
Right. There is a biological synergy in whole foods. The proteins, the trace minerals, and the lipids in a piece of salmon, they all work together in a way we simply haven't been able to fully replicate by extracting just the DHA oil and putting it into a gelatin capsule.
Wow. So the body prefers the whole salmon over the isolated chemical components.
It absolutely does. But we have to factor in the reality of modern dietary habits.
Right. Which aren't great.
No, they really aren't. A recent study of reproductive aged and pregnant people in the U.S. found that average seafood intake was a dismal 0.44 ounces per day.
Wait, 0.44 ounces a day? That's almost nothing.
It's basically nothing. Every single participant in that study consumed less than the recommended 8 ounces a week.
Okay, wow.
So when dietary intake of the actual whole food is that universally low across a population, the supplement becomes a pragmatic safety net. The evidence for the isolated pill might be mixed compared to the whole food, but having some of that biological wiring available is, it's better than having a total deficit.
That makes total sense. You want the premium steel for the skyscraper. But if the supply chain is broken, you absolutely take the backup material.
Exactly. You take what you can get to keep building.
Now, let's move from the structural beams to the highly specialized finish work, the micronutrients. Because the timing and the chemistry here are incredibly unforgiving.
Unforgiving is the perfect word for it.
Let's look at folate, or folic acid as it's known in its synthetic supplemental form.
Right. So humans actually lack the enzyme to make folate, which makes it the most prevalent micronutrient deficiency in pregnancy.
And its primary job is facilitating rapid DNA synthesis and cell division.
Right. Yes. Which is absolutely critical for the neural tube.
Right, the neural tube. For those listening, that's the embryonic structure that eventually folds and closes to become the baby's brain and spinal cord.
Exactly. And without enough folate, that cellular stitching process literally stalls out. It leaves a physical gap in the spine.
But the deadline for this closure is what really stands out in the research. The neural tube closes by 28 days after fertilization.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, that 28-day mark translates to roughly 6 weeks into the pregnancy based on how clinicians date it from the last menstrual cycle.
28 days. I mean, for a massive portion of the population, they don't even experience symptoms or know they are pregnant by day 28.
Most people don't have a clue at that point.
Right. If someone waits until they miss a period, takes a test, schedules a doctor's appointment, and finally gets a prenatal vitamin recommendation from their doctor, that biological window for the neural tube closing has already shut.
It's completely closed, and that timeline is exactly why public health policy shifted so aggressively on this.
How so?
The recommendation isn't just for pregnant patients anymore. It is that anyone with the potential to become pregnant should consume 400 micrograms of folic acid daily.
Oh, just as a baseline.
Exactly. The nutrient has to be circulating in your system well before the architecture of the brain and spine is laid down.
That makes so much sense now.
Yeah, and this biological reality actually drove the U.S. and Canada to mandate the fortification of everyday cereals, pastas, and breads with folate back in the late 1990s.
Oh, wow. I never put that together. So folate is a non-negotiable daily requirement.
Absolute non-negotiable.
But then our source outlines other vitamins where more is absolutely not better. And in fact, it can actually be dangerous.
Right. Vitamin A is a prime example of that.
Yeah, vitamin A. The fetus requires about 770 micrograms a day to develop the heart and face, which sounds normal. But if a patient takes massive doses, specifically the retinol forms found in certain high-dose supplements or even acne medications, it acts as a teratogen.
A teratogen being any substance that actively disrupts the physiological development of the fetus.
And the specific mechanism here is fascinating but also terrifying. The excess vitamin A damages cranial neural crest cells.
Right.
These are basically the master builder cells that migrate through the embryo to form the bones and cartilage of the baby's face and skull.
Exactly. And when those cells are disrupted by vitamin A toxicity, it leads to severe facial underdevelopment and microcephaly.
It's literally like pouring too much concrete on a construction site.
Mhm.
Instead of strengthening the foundation, the sheer weight of it crushes the delicate framing underneath.
It's a great visual, yeah. It requires walking a very delicate biological tightrope. The structures need vitamin A to form, but crossing that toxicity threshold destroys those exact same structures.
So how do you get it safely?
This is why clinicians strongly advise sourcing vitamin A through beta-carotene in the diet.
Like sweet potatoes and carrots.
Exactly. Sweet potatoes, carrots, leafy greens. Because the body will only convert what it actually needs into vitamin A, completely avoiding the toxicity associated with high-dose retinol pills.
Okay, so that's the toxicity side. But beyond toxicity, there is the issue of nutrients actively fighting each other in the gut, which I found mind-blowing.
Oh, the biochemical turf wars.
Yeah, the conflict between calcium and iron is a perfect example. During pregnancy, maternal blood volume expands tremendously.
Dramatically, yes.
So that requires about 27 milligrams of iron a day to build new red blood cells. But simultaneously, the fetus requires a massive 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams of calcium a day to construct its skeleton.
Right. Two massive structural demands happening at the same time.
But a patient can't just swallow an iron pill and the calcium pill with their morning coffee and expect both to work, can they?
They cannot. It actually initiates a biochemical turf war in the digestive tract.
A turf war.
Yeah. Calcium actively causes competitive inhibition with iron absorption. If they enter the gut at the exact same time, the calcium essentially blocks the iron from crossing the intestinal lining into the bloodstream.
Wow. So how do you manage that?
Managing this requires a very strict timing strategy. Clinicians advise taking an iron-containing supplement at one point in the day, and then taking any calcium supplements or even heavy dairy meals several hours later.
You literally have to keep them separated like fighting siblings.
You really do.
But the science on how we absorb iron gets even more counterintuitive. Because historically, if a pregnant patient had iron deficiency anemia, the standard protocol was, a high-dose iron pill every single day.
Right, that was standard practice for a long time.
But newer randomized trials show that taking oral iron on alternate days, like every other day, is actually just as effective for raising blood iron levels.
It is, and it causes far less nausea and constipation for the patient.
But how does that work? How does taking less iron over a week result in the exact same amount of iron actually making it into the bloodstream?
The answer lies in a regulatory hormone called hepcidin.
Hepcidin.
Yeah, so the human body is highly protective against heavy metal toxicity, including iron overload. When you swallow a large dose of iron, the liver immediately spikes hepcidin levels.
Okay.
Hepcidin's primary function is to lock down the gut and block further iron absorption. So, if a patient takes a heavy iron pill every single day, their hepcidin levels remain chronically high.
Oh, I see.
Right. So the gut simply refuses to absorb the subsequent doses. That leaves the unabsorbed iron to just sit there and cause severe irritation in the digestive tract.
The body is basically putting up a shield.
Exactly. By waiting 48 hours between doses, you allow those hepcidin levels to clear out of the system.
Right.
When that alternate day pill arrives, the gut is biologically primed and actually willing to absorb it efficiently.
So it's not about the sheer volume of what you swallow. It's about what your cellular machinery is willing to accept at that specific moment. Now, considering how incredibly complex these rules are, you've got the 28-day neural tube deadline, the vitamin A toxicity threshold, the iron-calcium timing, the hepcidin cycles. A listener would completely assume that prenatal vitamins are highly engineered, strictly regulated medical products designed to perfectly navigate all this biology.
It is a totally logical assumption, but legally and functionally, it is entirely incorrect.
Let's go back to that statistic from the very beginning, because it is crucial here. Prenatal vitamins are overseen by the FDA, sure, but they fall under a 1994 law called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act.
Right. DSHEA.
DSHEA, yeah. This means they are regulated strictly as dietary supplements, not as prescription drugs.
That distinction is massive.
The FDA does not verify their clinical effectiveness or even check their formulations before they are shipped to stores.
Under DSHEA, the regulation is almost entirely post-market. The government is not actively ensuring that a pill contains the optimal medical dosages required to build a fetus before a manufacturer designs a beautiful label and puts it on a pharmacy shelf.
Which leads to that mind-bending reality we mentioned earlier. Researchers analyzed 48 top-selling prenatal vitamins, and zero, literally zero, met the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists' baseline recommendations for folic acid, iron, DHA, vitamin D, and calcium.
It's frankly shocking every time I hear it.
Wait, so I can conceptually bottle up a random suboptimal dusting of vitamin C and calcium, print the word prenatal in an elegant font on the label, and just sell it without proving it hits any medical benchmarks.
Yes, and this raises an important question about patient advocacy. The burden of safety and efficacy has effectively been offloaded from regulatory bodies directly onto the consumer.
So the patient has to figure it out themselves.
Exactly. The pregnant patient has to become an amateur biochemist and their own medical advocate. They have to physically turn the bottle around and scrutinize the label for those absolute non-negotiables.
Like the minimum 400 micrograms of folic acid and 27 milligrams of iron.
Right, they have to verify it themselves.
And when patients start reading those labels, they run straight into the gummy vitamin trap.
Oh, the gummies?
Yeah, gummy vitamins are incredibly popular because pregnancy nausea is brutal, right? And chewing a sweet gummy is so much easier than swallowing a massive chalky capsule.
It is a lot easier on the stomach, for sure.
But the source explicitly warns that gummy prenatals almost never contain iron.
It is a fundamental chemical limitation. Iron is a heavy metal, and it has a very strong, distinct taste and oxidative properties.
Like chewing on tinfoil.
Yeah, it's exceptionally difficult to formulate iron into a gelatin or pectin gummy without completely ruining the texture and making it taste like old coins.
Right.
So if a patient switches to a gummy to manage their nausea and they just assume it provides comprehensive coverage, they might be unknowingly starting their body of the building blocks for red blood cells.
Basically walking straight into anemia.
Exactly.
And even if a patient avoids the gummies and buys traditional pills, the map on the back of the bottle requires translation. Like a label might proudly list 300 milligrams of ferrous fumarate.
Right.
To a consumer, that sounds like a massive dose of iron. But ferrous fumarate is a compound. The source breaks down the chemistry. Ferrous fumarate is only about 33% elemental iron.
And that elemental value is the crucial metric you have to look for. It represents the actual amount of the nutrient that is bioavailable for the body to absorb and use.
So that 300 milligram chemical compound only yields about 99 milligrams of usable iron.
Yes. The number in big print on the label is just the weight of the raw material, not the actual yield for the body.
But, this entire conversation about scrutinizing labels and calculating elemental yields, it operates on a major assumption.
It does.
It assumes the patient has the financial ability to buy the premium bottles and the geographic access to buy the whole foods that support them.
Which is a huge assumption. We cannot treat cellular metabolism as if it exists in a biological vacuum, separated from society. The biological mechanisms we are discussing are inextricably linked to social determinants of health.
The source data on socioeconomic disparities is really stark. Let's look at food deserts, for instance.
Right.
Nulliparous individuals, meaning people pregnant for the first time, who live in areas without easy access to fresh groceries, they consistently fail to meet baseline healthy eating goals.
Because the access just isn't there.
Right, if there is no grocery store selling fresh leafy greens or seafood within 5 miles of your home, you are geographically cut off from natural folate and natural DHA.
And when dietary access is restricted like that, the reliance on supplements obviously increases. Yet the data shows that prenatal vitamin use is heavily stratified by income.
Yeah, the numbers are rough.
For families living near the poverty line, less than 50% utilize prenatal supplements. Compare that to high-income demographics, where nearly 78% use them regularly.
So if insurance fails to cover a specific high-quality formulation, the out-of-pocket cost becomes a literal barrier to cellular health.
Exactly, which cascades directly into racial health disparities. The research tracks significant inadequacies in critical nutrients like vitamin E, magnesium, iron, and vitamin D among Hispanic and African American populations when compared to white populations.
It just highlights a compounding systemic failure where lack of access dictates biology.
It does. However, the data also highlights that targeted interventions do alter these outcomes.
Like WIC, right?
Yes, programs like WIC, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, they have a proven track record of actively improving dietary quality and closing these nutritional gaps for lower-income households by providing direct access to essential foods.
When you fix the foundation of access, the biological construction site can function properly.
Exactly.
But the playbook also changes entirely for people whose biological foundation is inherently different due to special dietary needs. Take vegan diets, for example.
Right, that completely changes the calculus.
We know vegans require supplemental B12 because B12 is crucial for fetal nerve development and is naturally found almost exclusively in animal products.
Yes.
We know they need extra calcium. But the mechanics of plant-based iron and zinc absorption are just a masterclass in gut chemistry.
The core issue there revolves around compounds called phytates, which are very abundant in plant-based diets.
Let's map that out. A healthy vegan diet relies heavily on beans, legumes, and whole grains, but those exact foods are incredibly rich in phytates.
Right.
So think of the digestive tract like an exclusive nightclub. The zinc and the plant-based non-hemo iron you consume are trying to get into the club, into your bloodstream.
Okay, I like this.
But the phytates act like massive muscular bouncers standing at the door. They bind to the minerals and literally say, not tonight.
That's a very accurate way to put it.
Because of those phytate bouncers, vegans often require higher supplemental doses of zinc and iron just to overwhelm the barrier and ensure enough nutrients actually make it into the blood.
That perfectly illustrates competitive inhibition in a plant-heavy gut microbiome. And it underscores why a one-size-fits-all approach to perinatal nutrition is scientifically flawed.
It just doesn't work for everyone.
No, a patient's anatomical history can completely rewrite their nutritional needs. For instance, if a patient has undergone bariatric surgery, like a gastric bypass, their digestive tract has been physically shortened.
Oh, right.
They physically lack the surface area to absorb nutrients normally, so the standard oral prenatal pill becomes essentially useless for them.
They just pass right through.
Exactly. They require intense, specialized monitoring for fat-soluble vitamins and often rely on intravenous iron infusions because oral pills simply will not be absorbed by their altered anatomy.
Or consider the exponential demands of a multiple gestation. If someone is carrying twins, they are literally building 2 skyscrapers simultaneously on the exact same plot of land.
The metabolic drain is immense. Because the cellular demand is doubled, the risk of developing anemia due to a folate deficiency is 8 times higher in twin pregnancies than in singletons.
8 times higher.
8 times, yeah. To compensate for that rapid dual cellular division, the baseline recommendation of 400 micrograms of folic acid jumps to a massive 1,000 micrograms daily, alongside doubled requirements for calcium and increased vitamin D.
It just reinforces the reality that the standard pink bottle on the shelf is merely a baseline suggestion. It's not a universal guarantee.
Not at all.
Which brings us to the core takeaway of this deep dive. A prenatal vitamin is not a magic shield that absolves you from understanding your biology.
No, it's exactly what the name implies. A supplement to a necessary nutritional foundation.
You have to turn the bottle around and read the elemental yields.
Yeah.
You have to avoid the gummy trap if you need iron. Time your iron and calcium doses to prevent a gut-level turf war. And critically, understand the timeline for neural tube closure begins weeks before most people even take a pregnancy test.
That synthesis really covers the absolute essentials of building the fetus. But, I want to leave you with the provocative thought from the cutting edge of perinatal research.
Oh, I'm ready. What is it?
Up to this point, we have framed dietary supplements entirely around constructing the baby, right? But emerging clinical data is shifting that focus. What if we utilize these over-the-counter supplements not just to build the child, but as biological armor to save the mother?
Wait, how does a standard vitamin act as armor for the mother?
We look at preeclampsia.
Okay.
It is a severe, highly dangerous hypertensive disorder unique to pregnancy. The condition is characterized by profound vasoconstriction, meaning the mother's blood vessels tighten and narrow dangerously, spiking blood pressure and putting massive strain on the organs.
Right. It's incredibly dangerous.
It is. But recent studies demonstrate that utilizing high-dose calcium supplementation, a gram or more a day, can actually stabilize the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels.
Really?
Yes. It significantly reduces the risk of preeclampsia, particularly in populations that have low baseline calcium intake.
So a basic, accessible mineral is effectively acting as a shield against a major life-threatening cardiovascular complication.
Exactly. And it goes even further than calcium. Clinical researchers are currently conducting extensive trials on L-arginine.
L-arginine, okay.
It is an amino acid that functions as a direct precursor to nitric oxide in the human body. Nitric oxide is a potent vasodilator. It actively relaxes and opens up blood vessels.
Ah, so the exact opposite of what preeclampsia does.
Precisely. A recent meta-analysis indicated that supplementing with L-arginine is associated with a drastically reduced risk of severe preeclampsia because it biologically opposes and neutralizes that dangerous vasoconstriction.
That completely flips the script. We aren't just talking about ensuring a fetus has enough raw material to grow cartilage anymore.
No, we are talking about deploying targeted over-the-counter amino acids and minerals as preventative cardiovascular medicine to protect the mother's life.
It entirely blurs the regulatory and conceptual line between a standard dietary supplement and a preventative pharmaceutical.
It does, and it represents an incredibly promising frontier in the future of perinatal care, where we use accessible biology to prevent systemic crises before they even begin.
That is a phenomenal realization to end on. Tomorrow morning, when you walk past that pharmacy aisle, you're going to look at that wall of pastel pink bottles with a completely different lens.
I hope so.
They are not regulated medical devices, and they certainly aren't magic spells. But if you understand the biological deadlines, if you know how to decode the chemical yields on the label, and if you respect how your gut actually absorbs these minerals, they are incredibly powerful tools. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Leading innovation, fertility, excellence. Live by Dr. Pat. Leading innovation in fertility excellence.